Hello, everyone. Welcome to a quick impromptu show. I'm not entirely at my setup right now and everything, but just wanted to get this out. I know many of you are wondering what happened on the first day. What did I see? What went on? Who impressed me? Who looked like what? Just give me a moment here because Miami just got a commitment as well. Uh, Three-star defensive lineman Josh Johnson just committed to the program just as I went live here. Great timing in itself. Fun times ahead as spring football is now in full gear. Everyone who was at practice today got the chance to see Darian Mensah up close and personal for the first time, and he was slinging it out there. And even some of the other quarterbacks kind of impressed on day one as well. So just give me a moment here while I share the stream out on social media and whatnot, and we'll continue to discuss here. Give me a second. There we go. All right. So I see questions rolling through here. Just give me a second. Let me just recollect my thoughts here. Just rolling everything off the top of my head from what I saw today at practice. Energy was high, obviously. It's the first day. I do think maybe a couple of guys were nervous because it was the first actual practice, but at least for freshmen in itself. The other thing I'll mention, I know plenty of people have questions about the cornerback coach, who's going to be the cornerback coach. Today, Terry Jefferson assumed that role for now, for the time being. Uh, we'll see if that holds and continues to take place and everything. Apparently, it's a situation that still has moving parts, but there is a very good chance that Terry Jefferson could be taking that job as the cornerbacks coach. And just specifically, I'm going to go down position by position. There's going to be a quick show. I'll take some questions that any of you guys leave here. But quarterbacks in itself, Darian Mensah, phenomenal touch on the ball from what I saw. And also great anticipation, too. There's one specific route. This was in just quick, impromptu, like 7-on-7 setting during practice where Malachi Tony was running an out route, and Mensah layered the way he layered that ball towards the outside was in a position where only Malachi Tony could make a play on it, and not where a defensive back could cut or, in other words, jump that route and potentially take that for a pick. I thought that was really impressive. Great catch by Malachi Tony there in itself. He also connected with Mensah also connected with Vandrevius Jacobs, new transfer from South Carolina, former South Florida guy who played his high school football at Vero Beach. But it stood out right away, and I mentioned this through the offseason. Vandrevius Jacobs is fast. He can get going. He can move. I think it's a great pairing to have him in this offense with Darian Mensah. Mensah was the most efficient deep pass quarterback this previous season. I think it will go a long way. Just those two being paired together. It's evident early on, too, how much trust there is already there between Mensah and Jacobs. They seem to have a little bit of chemistry already. Cooper Barkate and Xavier Lucas were really going at it today, whether it was one-on-ones or 7-on-7 portion. In particular, Xavier Lucas had a really good day. On one rep, he did get the better of Cooper Barkate. On a rep later on, Cooper Barkate came back, made a catch, a contested catch over the middle that was really hard fought. I think both of those guys definitely will have quite the competition going back and forth throughout spring. But I've seen some discourse as well over the past couple of weeks about Cooper Barkate that some fans are saying that just questioning his athleticism and this and that. Looked totally fine to me. Has very solid hands. I also think the biggest thing that stands out with him is that he understands how to use his body and positioning to get himself open. I think it's such an underrated trait for a wide receiver in particular, and that really stood out to me. The other wide receivers that kind of caught my attention, we didn't get to see too much from the running backs. It was just drills that they had going on. I'll touch on a couple little subjects about the running backs. However, the other wide receivers that kind of stood out to me, Dalen Upshaw definitely had a pep in his step today. Looks like he's put on some size as well. Malachi Tony's put on a little bit of muscle too, but still has retained his explosiveness. But Dalen Upshaw in particular seems a little more sharp and a little more attention to detail with every single thing that he does. Cam Vaughn, the transfer from West Virginia, his frame kind of surprised me. He's a little bit taller than I was expecting, and maybe a little more leaner than I thought he would be, but not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. I think he's a bit longer than anticipated. However, the thing I noticed is he can accelerate pretty quickly for a guy his size. You're talking about a guy that's roughly, I would say, about 6'3". Saw him standing next to other guys like Mylan Paris and Tyron Evans. Van Spafford, if you had to say who are the fastest guys in that receiver room, obviously you could throw in Malachi Tony in there. That's obvious in terms of game speed, but just like pure speed, just how quickly these guys can get down the field. Van Spafford is right there with Andreas Jacobs. I'm not sure which of the two yet is the fastest between the two, but I think Van Spafford is a little more further along than I was anticipating, actually. There was one particular rep, this pass came from Luke Nickel in particular, where it was a double move, essentially like a sluggo to the outside shoulder. And the way Van Spafford was able to sell that route was really impressive in itself. It was able to create significant separation, and that was against. It was a first team defensive back that he went up against on that rep. Elijah Lofton is another guy who continues to look pretty damn good when he's in practice. I know everyone's going to say, "Oh, well, we heard this last year and whatnot." I still think it's key, regardless, that there's the consistency there. You hope it translates to the field. Gavin Mueller really impressed with the tight ends as well today. Another guy who he's been an unsung hero through practices for the past year and ended up earning a scholarship himself. Owen Ruskovich had a few contested catches today. One of them came on a pass from Luke Nickel. Another came on a pass from Judd Anderson. But Gavin Mueller really impressed, in my opinion. And Israel Briggs, not necessarily that there was some big catch, but immediately with him, you notice it looks a little different with him. And I think he may potentially be the most athletic or just fluid type of guy in that tight end room. A little bit of a different skill set from the other guys, but has put on some considerable size since his arrival. I like what Miami has in the tight end room. I do think they have talent. It's just, figuring out and putting all the pieces together. Luka Gilbert was out there as well. There wasn't anything crazy that I saw from a receiver standpoint with Luka Gilbert, but it's hard to ignore the size that he has. He's like 6'8", 260, and arguably the best or one of the best inline blockers from that entire group. But I want to jump back over to the receivers as well. Of the younger guys, because I mentioned Malachi Tony and Dalen Upshaw and Cam Vaughn and Vandrevius Jacobs, and I already mentioned Van Spafford as well, but and Dalen Upshaw, from the other guy from the two guys from the freshman group, I want to highlight here. Samorian Wingo. Wow. I mean, I mentioned when he had arrived that there was some buzz about him that he was actually doing pretty well against Miami's defensive backs that were playing in the playoffs because he was here during those practices. Very solidly built. I would say he's a guy that's hovering probably around 6'2", over 190 pounds, runs extremely well at his size, solid hands, and understands how to use leverage as well to use his body to his advantage. And I think that's such an advanced technique for a guy that literally just got to Miami. Um, I see. I have a hard time seeing Wingo not playing this year. I I I don't know exactly how big his role will be, but I would be shocked if he was not playing this year. He's way ahead of schedule. It's just the little things with him is what really stands out. He's a great athlete too, strong hands. He didn't drop anything. Did not drop anything that I saw. He had a couple of nice catches from Darian Mensah, had some from Luke Nickel. And I think there was one other one that came from Coleman on a deep ball. And last guy I want to mention from receiver group, and I'll touch some things about the subject on running backs, but Mylan Paris. I had heard coming into spring football that he may be a little raw in terms of like technique. The two biggest things that stand out, though, I'm going to say this right away. Number one, Mylan Paris is absolutely massive. This guy is legitimate, like 6'6". He almost looks 6'7". He was standing right in front of us at practice. Him and Tyron Evans. Tyron Evans is pretty big himself too. But the thing with Mylan Paris, I was kind of surprised because he still has to put on some weight and muscle for his frame. He's a little more slender at his size. However, large catch radius and can play through contact too. That I was kind of surprised with that. I wasn't sure what to expect with that. I'm not sure how much he will play. I don't put it in the same category as like how I feel about Samori Wingo, but it definitely was a little eye-opening to see what Mylan Paris can do. And I don't think many guys on this roster have that skill set. I know some people are asking about Joshua Moore and everything. Not going to discuss that right now, whatever. I'm not going to get into rumors or what people are saying and everything, but he will be fine. And running backs, from what I saw, very, very minimal what we were able to see from the running backs today. However, I think Mark Fletcher looks just like he did, like in the playoffs, like in terms of just physical form, like his shape right now and everything that he's in, his health as well. Jordan Lyle was healthy. Didn't seem like there was any hiccups out there. Gerard Pringle had a few nice cuts during some inside run drills that they had going on today. Shamar Brown, to me, actually looked a little more lean now compared to last season. I'll take a further look when we go back out to practice Thursday. We only had so much time out there to see everything, but just trying to recollect all my thoughts on it. And the one guy that kind of surprised me in terms of his frame, I just want to talk about frame of the running backs because there's only so much we can go off of from today. Javian Mallory, I think he's reshaped his body since he's arrived from high school. I know some people had like questions about him coming in that about his playing weight and whatnot, that he may need to add a little more muscle and everything. I think he's leaned up and added effective muscle, like effective weight. Looks in really good shape. I really like that running back room. I think it's one of the most talented in the country. I have no problem with saying that. I think Miami's receiver room is very deep right now too. I think there's some guys who may not play this year that could play at several other programs right now. And last note on the quarterbacks is I touched on the subject about Darian Mensah. He was in control. Never did he like try to force the ball down the field either. Like his deep passing is one of his greatest attributes, but never did he try to push the envelope or force that. It just kind of came naturally when he would. Um, I like the fact that like the way he went through his reads and progressions, scanned the field very well from what we saw out there. I know there's a lot of discussion about Darion Coleman. I've been on record saying this. I absolutely love his arm talent. And I want to preface this by saying before people take it and run with this, I'm very excited about his future. And this is just day one, but I have a small critique. I think he has to get the ball out a little quicker. And that's only normal for a kid that's just started his first practice ever at a college football program. No one comes in extremely ready out the gate that they have everything down pat, but the arm talent is evident. The way he can naturally push the ball down the field, the ball comes out effortlessly. And he also has a great understanding already of how to layer the ball and put touch on it as well. Luke Nickel, he's put on some size. I think he looks in better shape than he did last year, to be honest. Looks a little more sturdy, has built his lower base a little more for a quarterback. I feel like he's improved in terms of like a consistency standpoint. Never did I see a year ago how many passes he was able to complete, and especially the deep shots as well. It kind of stood out. And offensive line questions. Here's what I'll mention. There's going to be a lot of experimentation this spring. There's not going to be like a set in stone type of thing. Yeah, they're throwing Jackson Cantwell right into the flames right away. He's starting off at left tackle, Matthew McCoy at right tackle. They have other guys. They're moving around at the positions and everything. I saw some impressive reps from Jaden Wilkerson today, number 71. I think he's a guy that maybe fans are sleeping on, but the coaches are not. They're really excited about his progress and development. Max Buchanan looks even bigger than he was last year. More muscle on him. He's going to be a factor in terms of these competitions on the interior of the offensive line. But I'm going to take a more extensive look at offensive line in the coming days of practice. There's only so much we could see in one setting. Defensive line, they were much further away from where we were at. We were only able to see them briefly from a physical standpoint because we couldn't see too much of the drills from the distance we were at. From a physical standpoint, Armando Blunt is a very scary man, or young man, basically, because he's very young for his class and everything. Hayden Lowe, just as advertised in terms of like his physique. Everyone has known this for the past year. We hope that he stays healthy and everything. There's a lot of high expectations for him. Marquise Lightfoot, another guy, he's put on some size since last year, and I think it's going to help him in the long run. But I don't want to go too deep into defensive line right now because there's only so little that we could see today. Linebacker. Well, before jumping to linebacker, defensive line, Mario Cristobal also mentioned it was basically almost at noon when he mentioned this, but Ahmad Moten will be sitting out for the spring. It's just precautionary stuff, nothing serious. Described as stuff by Mario Cristobal himself. I'm sure everyone can remember that he had an injury during the playoffs and could have missed games, but stayed in them and played through the injury. He's a very tough guy. Spring is the time of year where the coaches prefer for some of these guys to get some cleanup stuff done rather than waiting all the way until fall ball or seeing if things kind of heal on their own, waiting it out and whatnot. So jumping towards the linebackers, Kamal Bonner, he has improved his physique. Last year, you could kind of tell, even like during fall camp, that he wasn't exactly like what people were expecting when he was coming in. That has to do with some injuries he had along the way. And some of those injuries even carried into the season. They're really excited about him. I kind of see why they are. just from like the physique. He's like 6'2", 6'3", 235, almost 240 pounds. He could run as well. Plays very well downhill. Chase Smith, he's got a new number. I'll speak about new numbers in a bit, but he switched out of the old 41. He's wearing number 9 now. Muhammad Toure out there as well. People are expecting him to take another step this year, another year removed from his significant injury. And anything else from linebacker I want to share? One guy in particular that I think kind of popped today, but again, no pads yet, so only so much you can take away. But from an athletic standpoint, I really like what I saw from Jordan Campbell and even a guy like Kellen Wiley as well. I think those guys have like elite athletic traits, and you hope they put it all together from a football point of view, if you get what I'm trying to say here, just like IQ, like applying it to the field effectively. And then anything else there? Not much else I want to share on the linebackers. There's just a lot of stuff you saw today from QBs, wide receivers, DBs. More stuff will come as practice continues along. But defensive backs, I think this is one I want to discuss. To me, what it looked like to me, that the two best corners, at least today, very small sample size. Xavier Lucas was great today. Damari Brown, really good. Damari Brown, out of any of the corners, to me, I think he has the most impressive physique. Like, he literally looks like a prototype NFL cornerback, just pure physique. OJ Frederick, by the way, has put on some muscle from last season. Ethan O'Connor was a little up and down in terms of like some of the one-on-one, 7-on-7 stuff. Mind you, I want to share this as well, that don't take it as the gospel, what happens in these, like, especially one-on-one sessions, because cornerbacks or defensive backs in general, they tend to be at a disadvantage in these situations. They don't have safety help over the top. They don't have linebackers dropping into soft zones. So it's a little bit different. And three guys in particular that I think kind of impressed me today. Chris Ewald, the way he was able to track the ball downfield when, like, Luke Nickel was taking – Luke Nickel probably took the most deep shots of any quarterback today, in my opinion, at least from the viewing portion we got to see. Chris Ewald did a really good job in terms of tracking the ball deep downfield and being able to break up those passes. There was one in particular where it looked like Malachi Toney probably could have had like a clear touchdown, and then just late hands from Chris Ewald being able to knock that ball out. And then who else was it? Jalen Waters. Jalen Waters was very impressive for a true freshman. I think physically he's already kind of ahead of the curve than what you would expect for a cornerback as a true freshman. Playing wise, I think he's a little more advanced, like in terms of technique compared to some of the other freshman cornerbacks. I don't know how much he'll play this year. And yeah, I also saw plenty of good things from Jabari Antoine as well, who's put on some muscle from last season too. But I think Miami's got an interesting situation on their hands, because you have those top four guys between Lucas and Brown and Frederick and O'Connor, but you also have some young, talented players, and I wonder how can they balance that going forward. I am curious about that. There was also another particular rep. This is highlighting Samarian Wingo again, actually, but there was a rep where he went up against Brody Jennings early on in 7-on-7 portion. And this probably would have been a PI in an actual game from the defensive back, but Samarian Wingo was able to fight through contact and still snag the ball. And I'm not talking about like light contact. I'm talking about full on like hand scuffle in the middle of a route, and while the ball was released too. But yeah, I'm just curious how Miami handles the whole dynamic with that cornerback room going forward, because those top four guys, and I think they have some young talent there that wants to play, but how much can they realistically play? We'll see. Safety, though, biggest takeaway of the day. J.J. Dunnigan. Talked about him since he arrived during the playoff practices. I'll say it again. Super impressive. Super impressive. He had 2 pass breakups today that we saw during the viewing portion, and his closing speed is very, very impressive. Dare I say, like, I know some people have thrown out some comparisons to like a Jacoby Thomas or whatever. I think he's more athletically, I think much more athletically gifted than Jacoby Thomas. Very similar frames, but I think he's the better athlete of the two. I think he's faster. I think the hype is real. I think the hype is real when it comes to JJ Dunnigan. I see why the coaches speak very highly of him. Comes from a heavy football background. I think he's the freshman this spring, at least early on, that him and a guy like Samarian Wingo and obviously Jackson Cantwell, for people to continuously watch those guys in specific. And I've heard some good things on Kashawn Stansel early on, but those 3 guys that I mentioned, Cantwell, Wingo, and Dunnigan, are guys to watch very closely as spring continues to progress. Obviously, a lot can change once pads come on. I think this is my personal take, but I think a guy that could really shine when the pads come on is Justin Edwards, true freshman linebacker who's in that linebacker room. But just quick hitter thoughts and everything. I know there was a couple of questions that rolled in here. Thank you to everyone who has stopped by. I see it's been like over 300 people who stopped by. Been talking for the past like 20 minutes or so. Miami got a commitment. And yeah, just great afternoon in general. I am going to be back on live later for an actual real show. I'm going to be on with Brett and everything. And also, just another quick tidbit as well. Amon and I are going to be starting back up Who Want Smoke very soon. And we have discussed it and everything. We were getting a couple of things prepared in interim and whatnot, just make sure everything goes over smoothly. And there's just going to be a lot more content coming. Make sure also to check the CanesWear website in the news section. I'm going to have a write-up on some of the things I saw from today. This is just all from my head. I'm not even like reading off. I'm just staring off into space, trying to remember every little detail that I can. But it was a good first day. There's only so much you could take away from it, though. No pads. It's just simple stuff, a lot of drills and everything. But yeah. Howard Stern, today's the first day of the new journey. Let's effing go Canes. He said, Mensa looks chubby. Definitely not. No, I wouldn't say he looks chubby. He actually looks like in solid shape. I wouldn't say he's like Greek god type of physique, but definitely not chubby. Fish fan Miami, go Canes, big go. How did the OL movement look? So I spoke about the offensive line. Biggest development right now, at least, is Cantwell starting off at left tackle, McCoy at right tackle, and a lot of movement inside, a lot of mixing and matching. Guys like SJ, Ryan Rodriguez, Sampson, and those guys, Jamal Merriweather and Max Buchanan, all competing on the interior. Christianville, thank you for stopping by, brother. He said Dunnigan. Yes, JJ Dunnigan. I don't want to say Cantwell wasn't one of the most impressive guys today, but there's only so much you could take away when the offensive line is not doing a lot of contact stuff just yet. It's just very like procedural walkthrough type of things, just routine. But Wingo and Dunnigan today, man, I mean, wow. The evaluations on those two, wow. Howard Stern said, Luka looks stiff. I heard and slow. No, I wouldn't say stiff. I just don't think I don't think Luka Gilbert is like the type that is just very agile, but as a tight end, he can get down the field vertically. I just don't think you would be using him like in quick game or short dump off passes. Howard Stern with a hot take. Wingo will start by week 6. He will pass more soon. That's a hot take because I know internally, and I've mentioned this actually in the last show when I was on with Brett, that um, they're really excited about what Josh Moore could be this year. They're pushing for consistency from him. Mr. Jake said, Father Geo. Yeah, you probably heard my kids screaming off in the background or something, whatever. I'm not at my usual setup recording right now. So, yeah. Howard Stern said, Josh Johnson is going to be a sleeper. Remember that name? Yeah, he committed, actually. Literally right as it was going live, he ended up announcing his commitment. So, that's it for now. I'll be back on live later around, I think it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock tonight. I'll be on with Brett. Who Wants Smoke is coming back again very soon. It's going to be within the next few days. Me and Amon will be back on. I know many of you are looking forward to that. So, and one last question here. Trey M., you're going to be the last question before I get off here. It's just a quick thing that I stopped by here for. How does JJ Dunnigan look? Great. Phenomenal physique. A lot of comparisons to Jacoby Thomas, but I think much more athletic than even Jacoby Thomas was. Comes from a great football background as well. As football is pushed very heavy in his family. And in terms of what he showed today, really impressive from closing speed and ball skills, the ability to break up passes and playing with physicality as well. I thought he was just really, really impressive. I think it's going to be interesting to watch the nickel and safety competitions going forward. Obviously, you would figure it'd be Poyser and Fitzgerald or whatever, but however it works out, I expect Miami to have a rotation at safety regardless. JJ Dunnigan, the type of athlete that he is, could play in multiple positions. He's really good. And last one, Howard Stern. Lucas should have played more last than the weekends. That you see, but yeah, I saw the pro day stuff. I don't want to continue beating a dead horse on the bomb and stuff. Let's move on to brighter things. Oh, and one last thing, actually, related to that. I think many fans will love this. I'll leave this as a footnote to close out this quick session. But there was an emphasis this morning on special teams drills and procedural approach to everything. So I think many people will be happy to hear that. I think some people may be pissed off because, yeah, you could arguably say it possibly cost Miami a championship, but I think the team is in a very solid state right now. I think they have a very well-rounded roster. I think the wide receiver room is deeper. I think the running back room is just as good as it was last year. It will potentially be better. I think the quarterback room could have a higher ceiling. Offensive line, we'll see what happens. Tight ends, I think there's more talent in that room. So, you would hope they could shake something and find 2 viable options. Defensive line, I don't think they're going to miss much of a beat. And I think guys on the interior like Justin Scott and Ahmad Moten and Jarquez Carter and Keanu Davis are going to be guys that really help continue the consistency there. And linebacker will be interesting because there's a lot of young pieces or guys that have been working to get their body and physique up to par, and they're there now. Guys like Kamal Bonner and Cam Pruitt who could factor in, and defensive back is very, very deep. So I love the makeup of Miami's roster. I think they're going to be a really good team this year. I know it's super early, but even before spring started, I felt really good about this roster, and I think today reinforced some of that just a little pinch. So thank you everyone for stopping by. Be back on again around 8:30, 9 o'clock with Brett. Who Wants Smoke is coming back again very, very soon within the next few days. And thank you for stopping by. See you soon.